I'm going to be talking about a very important topic, and probably something that's been very mindful on everyone's mind, particularly over the last 6, 12, 18 months, really, all around stress and burnout. So this is a topic I can and have spoken about for hours. So I'm going to keep it really concise for 10 minutes and give you some insights. If there's anything else you want to learn, feel free to message me afterwards. But when it comes down to stress and burnout, it's a really important thing. It's when you look at some of the stats, on average, 2 in 3 sales reps say they're close to or experiencing burnout. It's one of the main causes that can really impact our mental health and our mindset and our success and performance. So first thing, I'm going to jump into this kind of analogy of how we should see stress. And everyone has this stress container. Now, your stress container will be very different to everyone else's. And over time, as you become more resilient and experienced throughout your career, your stress container can get bigger. When that stress container fills up or stays at a sort of peak level too long, this is where burnout and overwhelm can occur. And this can be from a variety of things that can be coming into your stress container on a daily basis. Big things, small things, things you can control, things you can't control. And I'd recommend just doing this little exercise. Sometimes it can give you a bit of perspective as to exactly what's going in, what you can and what you can't control, and also cutting yourself a bit of slack sometimes and recognizing that there is a lot of things going on. No wonder you are stressed. Now, not only is it important to analyze what's going in, but also recognize the taps that you can create, because stress alone doesn't cause burnout. Stress without the right kind of resources and support is what causes burnout. So I'm going to talk about some of those taps at the end of this session. Now, some of the other things that cause burnout, there's a lot of things, of course, and some of them are quite well known. I'm going to touch on maybe some of the things that aren't as well known around this. The first thing, excessive drive and ambition. Now, I'm not saying don't be driven or ambitious. I probably wouldn't be on here if I did say that. But it's about excessive use of it. And the analogy I often use is a bit like when you finish a gym session or a run or whatever sport you play, you feel really good. You feel great. But you know, if you tried to do that run or that gym session or play that game again, your body would fail on you at some point. And that's a really important thing to think about when you've had a good week, month, quarter, year. Is it's all very well and good going and doing it again, but it's asking yourself, is what I'm doing sustainable? Am I able to do this in the long run? And if not, how can I make this more sustainable? If you've been working every weekend to get to that point, fair enough, you might need to have done that for a certain quarter, but doing that over and over is not going to be healthy for you. So it's really important to think about that and recognize and ask yourself, what I'm doing, is it sustainable from an individual perspective or a team perspective if you do have one? The second thing is lack of self-recognition. It's great to get external validation, all that feedback, those Slack messages, the commission, the awards, the shout outs. But a lot of the time we struggle to really believe in it. And it can often feel like if it was a game of football, we're almost playing a knockout game every time. Rather than a league game, we don't have any credibility behind us. So we feel like every month or every situation is a win or lose. And a lot of that comes down to a lack of self-recognition. If you're not giving yourself credit or recognizing when you're doing well, then you're not really going to believe it when other people say it. It will feel nice, it will sound nice, but it won't last long in your memory. So it's really important to make that time at the end of each day, going through and saying, like, what are 3 to 5 things that went well today? I do something on a Friday, a weekly wins, where you just write down for 10 minutes, what did I do well this week from a personal and a work perspective, from a process perspective rather than an outcome perspective. The next is neglecting non-work identities and known needs. So what often happens is we get so fixated on our number, on our target, on what we're doing, that we base all of our self-worth, value, and identity around it. But I'm pretty sure outside of work, you might be a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a husband, a wife, a volunteer, a coach, a brother, a sister. All of these identities make you who you are and make you great at what you do, and have probably got you to where you are in your career. But we're often, those are the things we don't really think about. So I'd really recommend just thinking about outside of work, how do you bring value to those roles and what does success look like? How do you determine if you're being a good brother, a good sister, a good boyfriend, wife, husband, coach, whatever it might be? The more you can recognize those things, the less likely you are to place all your self-worth and value in one area that can be so fluctuating in performance and those good and bad days as well. And then finally, being mindful of those micro stress doses, those MSDs throughout your day. Often we'll have a call that doesn't go well, or an email that comes in, or a conversation, and we think that's the thing that's caused it to ruin our day, that email or that message. It's probably not. It's the old adage of the straw that broke the camel's back. It's recognizing that these micro stress doses throughout our day can contribute towards this kind of culmination of feeling like this one event has caused it. which can then create limiting beliefs around it. So it's just being mindful of that, recognizing even your alarm clock waking you up in the morning is a micro stress dose. And throughout your day, you're probably getting these onwards and onwards that's causing you to feel like that. So just be mindful when those situations do happen. It's probably not that situation. It's probably a culmination of things, which is why going back to the stress container, it's really beneficial to analyze what is going in there and how you can either preempt it or prevent it. Now, some of the other questions I often get is, well, what's the difference? How do I know if I'm stressed or burnt out? Now, there's a number of ways to analyze this, but just to give you a bit of a broad understanding and a breakdown of some of them. Stress is often characterized by over-engagement. You'll find yourself or someone in your team saying yes to everything, wanting to get involved in all the chat, wanting to do all the social things, even when they've got not so many things on their plate already. They might not be performing, or you might not be performing where you want to be, but this is often a sign of chronic stress. Burnout is often characterized by disengagement. Someone isn't going to be active on the chat, isn't going to want to be socializing after work, isn't probably going to be doing much at the weekend. You might ask them and they might be like, oh, I didn't really do much, just the same thing, nothing much. That's a sign of potential burnout. Stress emotions are often overreactive, finding yourself getting angry or sad quite easily. Burnout emotions are quite blunted. You might speak to someone on your team and give them some feedback or have a conversation with them, and on the face of it, you might think, oh, they're not motivated, or they're not interested, or they don't care, but it might be that they're burnt out. The other one there is around urgency and hyperactivity versus a feeling of helplessness and hopelessness, almost this feeling of permanence where how I feel now is how I'm always going to feel, and I don't see any way around this or anyone who can help me from it. Now, just quickly, I'm mindful I've just got over 3 minutes left. Preventing burnout. What are some of those taps that I mentioned that you can do to work on this? Get yourself a mental health buddy. You don't want to always speak to your manager. You might not feel comfortable despite a great relationship sometimes, or hopefully often, I should say. So find someone you work with who you may see in the office or remotely on Zoom calls regularly or on Slack, and just say, look, Chris, if you see myself and I'm not myself this week or that day, you've got permission to check in with me. Doing that means you're less likely to get defensive when someone does because you've given them permission. Secondly, encourage you to talk sooner rather than letting things build up. And third, over time, helps you become more self-aware, because we don't realize we're not being ourselves sometimes until a day or a week is over. If someone else can point it out, it can really help us. Secondly, imagine your energy is like your phone battery. Some days you wake up 100%, some days you wake up 50%. Be mindful of how you spend your time, energy, I should say. We focus too much on time management and not enough on energy management. For example, you could say, I've got 2 hours to get from A to B, but if you haven't got enough fuel in the tank, you're not going to get there. So before you focus on managing your time, focus on managing your energy. Give yourself upper and lower boundaries of how you're going to operate that day, a minimum and maximum of each task. The lower part is to allow that even if, for example, the worst day possible, all these last minute meetings come up, this firefighting, you can still say, well, at least I did this. And the upper boundary stops you going too far, that stops you then for the next 2 or 3 days afterwards feeling burnt out or exhausted. Very similar to the gym analogy. You might feel like, I feel really good, I'm going to keep training. You spend another hour in the gym. For the next 2 or 3 days, you can't do anything. So it's really important to give yourself those boundaries and just think, how am I recharging myself? How am I giving myself that time? And to do that, it's important to give yourself pit stops. Don't just wait for the need to have a break. Proactively build one in. When you feel like you need it, again, waiting for your car to need fuel, you'll be pushing it up a hill. Waiting for your phone to need battery, you'll be charging it for longer. Proactively build those in. One other thing mentally is a really good thing is eat the frog when you're at your best. Some of you might be familiar with Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Do the toughest thing at the start of your day. Doing that avoids you procrastinating on it. Secondly, it gives you a mental win, feeling like, well, I've done the hardest thing today, so everything else is going to be easier. And then finally, focus on your self-talk. Imagine you had someone walking around all day going, you need to do this, you should do this, you have to do this, you need to eat better, you have to exercise, you have to call these people, you should work out more. Get very tiring, but that's how we speak to ourselves a lot of the time. Changing that language to want to or get to implies you have more choice. It doesn't feel like there's pressure or judgment when you don't. I want to exercise. I want to eat healthier. I get to speak to people today. I get to make calls. I get to go for a walk. All of these things are some ways to be able to turn on those taps and start relieving some of that pressure. So thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you really enjoyed my talk today. I've got a bit more about this. If you want me to send you over the 5 stages of burnout, I can send it over separately. I'll put my LinkedIn in the comments below. But 3 seconds left. I'll hand back to Owen or James. Thanks very much, everyone. Speak to you soon.